Alright, to continue on.
Using my pipette tip, I scrape a little bit of the NCMV B71 with the end of my tip and put a little chunk of that into the 3 mils of LB plus amp. So then I put that in there, and then I pipette up and pipette down in order to remove anything that might have gotten stuck. Put it back, make sure nothing else is thawed. And then, so you have that into solution because it defrosts pretty quickly. So you have your bugs in solution. And then you make sure to dispose of your pipette tip in the biohazardous waste because that in there. And then I pipette up and pipette down in order to remove anything that might have gotten stuck in the pipette. And then if the glycerol stock is too frozen and you can't isolate a chunk, then you take out some of the LB, pipette up, and squirt some of that room temperature LB into the frozen glycerol stock in order to soften it, so you have kind of like a slushy mush. And then you can remove some of the bacteria that's frozen there because it's softened, and then you can remove a chunk from there. So then after you've done that, you scrape a little bit and then put it into the LB amp, and then you twist the cover back on and put it back in the negative 80-degree freezer. So only that has maybe chilled a little bit, gotten maybe a little bit warmer. So then you put it.
So this would be because she's after the glycerol. She's talking about oh. Separating and then putting it back in the freezer before it freezes. So this is what you're supposed to do next.
Put it back, make sure nothing else is thawed, and then so you have that into solution because it defrosts pretty quickly. So you have your bugs in solution. And then you make sure to dispose of your pipette tip in the biohazardous waste because it's biohazardous and you don't want anything else to be growing out of there. And then you take the 3 mil culture tube that's labeled and you put it into the shaker room. And the shaker room is where my bugs will grow overnight. But when I'm doing a small culture, first of all, you need to turn down the shaker so that it's not turning so fast. So then you turn it down, and then you wait till it comes to a complete stop. And after that, you put the 10 mil culture tube on the shaker. Then you turn it up, and then you close the door. It's kept at 37 degrees, and so you make sure that the shaker comes on again because a lot of people have different stuff growing on there. And after that, after it's...
So she talks about this is the end where you put the culture in the shaker and make sure you put it in the 32-degree room.
Done. Then you let it incubate for about 6 to 7 hours, or however long you're working there. And so you need to inoculate a big culture, and right before you leave, you take the small culture. You have 3 mils.
So she talks about how long you're supposed to let it incubate. So we're talking about time frame for the culture, so 6 to 7 hours.
And then you take the small culture and separate that.
Okay. So I am going to review the story in chunks and paraphrase the sections.
My name is Pam Chrysosimo, and this summer I've been working at a lab at UCSD. Basically, my job has been to isolate plasmid DNA for injections.
Hi, my name is Pam Costano. I am attending USD, and I've been participating in at a lab.
Injections for my studies. I'm a double major at Stanford, or at least I hope to be. At this point, I'm undeclared. And so I'm majoring in bio, and eventually I want to go to med school. So volunteering at a laboratory seemed like a pretty good idea. And
I am currently undecided. Like I'm not. I doing just basically general studies at U.S. Stanford. I'm hoping to choose two majors. One of them is biology, and so participating in a lab experimentations uh, was to me the best idea for what I want to do.
I've actually learned a phenomenal amount. I came into the lab at ground zero knowing nothing about molecular bio, and now I've learned a lot this summer. So my job is to make DNA basically, and in order to make DNA, I need to.
I've been taught so much this past summer. It's just been an awesome experience. And so I'm going to describe to you uh, my duties of um, plasmid DNA.
Go through two major steps, and the first step is growing up the bugs or bacteria, and the second step is going through a process which breaks down the bugs, breaks down the bacteria, the cell walls, and removes the proteins and stuff, and then isolate the DNA from that.
So my two duties are to grow up the bacteria, or we also call it bugs. And my other duty is to separate the bugs. Um,
So what I'm going to describe is how to start a culture of DNA, start a small culture of DNA, and that's called inoculation. So the first thing I need to do is I need to figure out what number the plasmid is. For example, today my boss told me to that I.
so we're going to start something called inoculation. It's another word for it would be um, to start. It's DNA start DNA with culture, which is another word for a bacteria. And so I have to. It's a number system, which my boss explained to me.
I have to make a culture of NCMV B71 tomorrow. So in order to do that, I need to grow the bugs up overnight. And so I go into her catalog of DNA, and the number for NCMV B71 is number 32. And so I need to remember that number because when I go into the freezer.
So my boss explained to me that I have to grow this bacteria um, overnight. So, she has a listing of bacteria, and so I go and read up on the listings, and I find the number 32, which is what she told me I needed to remember.
There's a lot of DNA in little tubes and with certain numbers on them, and so rather than wasting my time looking on the labels of all the tubes, there's numbers on the top, so I just remember the number 32. And so the first thing that Delphine taught me.
So there is a list of tubes with all of these numbers, and so to get straight to the point, I just look for the number 32.
Was to label everything. So I get a piece of colored tape and write the number 32. You need three things on all when you label. You need the name of what it is, the date, and your initials. And so I put number 32 and CMV B71. The date is 8/27/96, and PC are my initials. And I stick the colored tape on a 3 mil. Mil is milliliter. Actually, I get a 10 mil culture tube and alquat 3 mils of LB.
So on this tube that's about 10 mil, my boss Delphine told me that I had to label them. Everything has to be labeled, And there's three things that's important data, three important uh, things or information that needs to be on those tubes is the name, the date, and what exactly that culture is.
Into it. And LB is Luria broth, and Luria broth is the media for which the media in which the bacteria grow, the bugs grow. And so I aliquot 3 mils of LB into the culture tube, and in order to aliquot that amount, we need to be precise. So we have a tool called the pipette aid, and it's kind of a suction thing. In chemistry, you use bulbs, but this is more of a mechanic thing. And we stick the pipette into the pipette aid and suction up 3 mils of LB, and then we put 3 mils.
So now we want to separate the LB, and what we're using to separate that is a instrument called a pipette.
Of this LB into the culture tube. And after that, I need this plasmid has to be ampicillin resistant. So we go into the freezer, and in my box I have a little tube of A100, and A100 stands for ampicillin 100 milligrams per milliliter. And so since this is frozen, I need to take the ampicillin out of the freezer and put it on the heat block in order to thaw it, because you can't remove things you can't pipette out of something that's frozen. So I put it on.
So I have to go into this freezer and get out an A meal. Why? Because it needs to be defrost, and so I have to heat it up.
On the heat block, and once it's thawed, I get a different thing called a pipette men, which is it's blue, and you use to pipette different small amounts up. And so I pipette up 3 microliters, which is, we call them written. It's called lambda, Lambda, and that's the Greek letter. And I pipette 3 lambda of the thawed ampicillin, and aliquot that, eject that into the 3 mils of LB. And so now
So I grasped the substance that's supposed to go into the culture. I get 3 mils of that and insert it into the culture.
bacteria or any bugs that grow in this LB will be ampicillin resistant. And so then I make sure to put that back in the freezer, because that needs to be frozen and it can't be left outside. And then after that's ready, I make sure the cap is on and the label is on, make sure everything's okay. And then I need to go into the freezer room in order to get my bugs. So now that the media is ready and the culture tube is ready and everything.
So upon finishing putting in the meal into the LB, I screw the cap on, and with its proper labels in place. And so then I have to go to the room where it's below freezing, or it's extremely cold.
Everything's labeled. Then I go into the freezer room, and the bacteria is stored at negative 80 degrees Celsius. So I make sure before I start, and I've always had my gloves on, because these things are biohazardous.